For what purpose does the gentleman from Guam seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move that House suspend the rules and pass House Resolution 915.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 915, resolution urging the government of Ukraine to review and modify its decision to suspend adoption by foreign nationals with a view to resuming such adoptions, particularly in cases where the mutual concerns of the governments of Ukraine and of the United States can be substantially addressed.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Guam, Mr. Moylan, and the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Manning, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Guam.
I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 days to revise and extend to include extraneous materials on this measure.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, on February 24, 2022, Russia launched a brutal, unprovoked, full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In the almost 3 years since the dark day, Ukraine has suffered countless atrocities committed by Vladimir Putin's forces. Russian forces are responsible for murdering more than 12,000 civilians, with millions more displaced. However, Putin's war of aggressions has impacted one demographic group the most: Ukraine's children. Since the beginning of the war, over 500 children have been murdered by Russian forces, and over 19,000 Ukrainian children have been forcibly abducted into Russia. According to the National Social Service of Ukraine, over 1,800 Ukrainian children have been orphaned. These children belong to loving, caring families that were ripped apart by Putin's war of aggression. They have been brutalized and traumatized by almost 1,000 days of the most horrific conflict that Europe has seen in decades. These children deserve a loving home and a second chance at a happy life. Thankfully, there are many families in the United States who wish to welcome these children with open arms. On March 13, 2022, the government of Ukraine temporarily suspended adoption proceedings and protocols for the placement or adoption of its children with foreign nationals. This decision was made in the best interest of the children as Ukraine's government struggled to conduct official business under the shock of early days of the invasion. However, since then, the government has substantially restored its ability to conduct official business. This resolution urges the government of Ukraine to review and modify its decision to suspend adoptions and pre-adoption placements of Ukrainian children by U.S. citizens. Recently, Ukrainian government confirmed that they will process inter-country adoptions in limited circumstances and for persons who have already received an official referral from National Social Services. While this is a very positive step, more can be done to work with the government of Ukraine to speed up adoptions. These children deserve a second chance at life. American families stand ready with open arms to provide a healthy, safe, and stable environment for these children. I urge all my colleagues to support this important resolution, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of HRES 915, urging the government of Ukraine to review and modify its decision to suspend adoption by foreign nationals with a view to resuming such adoptions, particularly in cases where the mutual concerns of the governments of Ukraine and the United States can be substantially addressed, and I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
In the beginning of this Congress, my colleague from Texas and chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Chairman McCall, held a number of hearings that underlined the evil actions and aims of Russia's war against Ukraine. We looked at oversight issues, questions regarding strategic goals, and other aspects of U.S. support for Ukraine. All of that committee work was designed to shore up support for the freedom of Ukrainians ahead of difficult decisions and difficult votes about United States support for Ukraine's sovereignty and its ability to defend itself against wanton, unjustified Russian assaults. One of the fundamental reasons to support Ukraine in this war boils down to truth and justice. Whether we will decry the depravity of Putin's actions in Ukraine or whether we will look away. And no other issue brings better into focus than this forcible transfer and deportation of Ukraine's children to camps promoting indoctrination. These are brutal war crimes, plain and simple. We were able to meet some of these children who were able to escape Russia at a committee hearing, and it was heartbreaking. Due to Russia's renewed war of aggression, Ukraine limited intercountry adoptions, including Americans seeking to adopt Ukrainian children. On June 1st, 2023, the government of Ukraine suspended its suspension of adoptions by allowing relatives of orphaned children to adopt. Ukraine is also processing intercountry adoptions for persons who have already received an official referral from its National Social Service to adopt. We must recognize the positive steps that Ukraine has taken to permit intercountry adoptions while promoting the welfare and safety of Ukrainian orphans. I commend the Ukrainian government and Department of State for working to address concerns, including by allowing American families the opportunity to adopt Ukrainian children and provide them a second chance at a life free of the miseries of war. Furthermore, in March 2024, the United States, under President Biden's leadership, was proud to join the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children. The goal is to ensure the safe return of all Ukrainian children who have been unlawfully deported or forcibly transferred by Russia to Russia, and to promote accountability for those responsible. Unfortunately, this Russian war has left Ukraine wounded, its families destroyed, its children orphaned. HRES 915 paves the way for a path forward, empowering the Department of State to continue its diplomatic engagements with the Ukrainian Ministry of Social Policy, the National Social Service of Ukraine, and the Ukrainian Embassy in Washington to help provide these children with families to help raise them. I encourage my colleagues to join in supporting this measure, in supporting freedom and democracy for Ukraine, its people, and its children. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Guam is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey and the chair of the Global Health, Global Human Rights, and International Organization Subcommittee, Mr. Smith.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. And, you know, Mr. Speaker, when Russia launched its brutal invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, 2022, Matt and Deidre Gordon of New Jersey were in the final stage of adopting Bogdan and Galina, an orphan brother and sister from Ukraine. The Gordons had been vetted and approved as adoptive parents by both the United States and Ukrainian governments. They had a strong bond and relationship. They had a deep love and have a deep love for those two children and had spent precious time with them at their home in New Jersey, including regular contact and 2 long homestays totaling 5 months. In March of 2022, however, during the first weeks of the Russian invasion, the Gordons had an appointment in Kyiv to be officially matched with the kids. It was at that point, however, that the Ukrainian government temporarily suspended intercountry adoptions. Arguably, the government of Ukraine had reasons to suspend some adoptions because of the fog of war and the difficulty in doing the requisite due diligence to safely and effectively process new adoption requests. But the Gordon case wasn't new. Matt and Deidre and many other Americans, hundreds of Americans, were nearing the end of the process when grounded when it all grounded to a halt, leaving, in this case, these 2 children and hundreds of other children stranded. Because of their deep love for their children, the Gordons have continued to visit Bogdan and Galina, who are in an institutional setting in Poland. Let me just say, I did contact wrote letters to Zelensky, and I'll put this one that goes back to July, asking for a remedy here and to resolve this. We didn't even get an answer. There are hundreds of other children and U.S. families in the same or similar situation, as I've indicated, and I strongly urge my colleagues to support HRES 915, which respectfully urges the government of Ukraine to review and modify its decision to suspend adoption by foreign nationals for adoptive parents like the Gordons and their children. Mr. Speaker, the resolution makes specific recommendations, which I will put in the record, including there are cases in which adoptive U.S. parents have already completed, as I mentioned, the requirements under the Ukrainian domestic law and for the adoption of Ukrainian children, and in which the adoptability of these children has already been confirmed, and also which the adoptive U.S. parents have already had their dossiers vetted and approved by the Ukrainian government. Please don't delay any longer. Those kids want a loving home, and there is one awaiting them as we speak. Second, there are also cases in which Ukrainian children have already participated in hosting programs facilitated by the government of Ukraine and placed with individuals within the U.S. before suspension of adoption by foreign nationals. Let me just say to my colleagues, this is, those kids have suffered much, certainly being in that kind of isolation, and orphanages are there, but it is so much better to be in a loving home, and we've got a remedy sitting right at our fingertips, and I'm calling on the government and President Zelensky especially to do so. Let me also say, the Ukrainian government resumed domestic adoptions, and they did that in June of 2022. So there is an apparatus, there's a capability, a capacity that can do this job. So I want to thank Matt and Deidre Gordon from New Jersey for bringing the needs of these Ukrainian children to my attention, and for the extraordinary leadership and compassion of former State Senator Ray Lesniak for first suggesting that the House pass this resolution. Thank you so very much, Ray. Also, really special thanks to my good friend and colleague, Donald Norcross, who helped us craft this resolution, has been there every step of the way as the lead Democrat co-sponsor. Thank you so very much, Donald, for your leadership on this important issue. And I also want to thank Mark Milosh, the Republican staff director of the Lantos Commission. Previous to that, when I chaired the Helsinki Commission, he was my chief of staff there as well. He's very, very capable and really understands the European theater and the politics, and he helped us draft this as well, and Trent Bunker. This resolution deserves the full support of this body, and I urge it, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Guam reserves. Gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, my friend Representative Donald Norcross, the lead Democrat on this important resolution.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Rep. Manning, for yielding. I rise in support of House Resolution 915, but I rise today for the Ukrainian children, those without a family, and for the Americans who wish to give them one. It's been over 1,000 days since Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine suspended adoptions for obvious reasons by foreign nationals to protect the safety of their children. But as this war continues, the need to place these children in loving homes only grows. And many Americans who were in the process of adopting some of those stories we just heard, these kids are stuck in limbo as the war rages on. In my home state, New Jersey, Andres and Farah McHat processed right in the middle of adopting 2 of these children. They formed strong bonds with these kids. They hosted them in their homes. And right before this was going to work its way through the bureaucracy, an invasion began and changed everything. A few weeks later, those children had to return to Ukraine because of what Putin did and when war arrived in their home cities. That's why I'm urging the Ukrainian government to resume the adoption by American citizens. There are no allies stronger than the U.S. Families across the U.S. stand ready, open arms to provide healthy, safe, and a stable environment for these children. I want to thank Ray Lesniak, who called me up to remind me we needed this pass. He is a wonderful friend that I served with in the New Jersey Senate. And Chris, for what you continue to do each and every day. The idea of these children being in limbo, lost their families, but there is light at the end of this rainbow, and that's the American families who want to call them part of theirs. And I urge all my colleagues to engage and vote for House Res 915, and I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Gentlewoman from North Carolina reserves. Gentleman from Guam is recognized.
No further speakers. We are
For what
prepared.
purpose does... Gentleman from Guam.
I have no speakers and will continue to reserve until the gentlelady yields back her time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
We have no further speakers, and I'm prepared to close.
Gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
I yield myself as much time as I may consume for the purpose of closing. Mr. Speaker, this has been an unimaginable, agonizing time for the Ukrainian people and especially for the Ukrainian children who sadly have been pawns in this terrible war. And it's been agonizing for adopting parents like those we heard about today who have been waiting to give some of those children warm, loving homes. Mr. Speaker, this resolution is about doing what's right for Ukraine and for the children of Ukraine who have already endured such tragedy, such hardship. By working with Ukraine to reopen pathways for inter-country adoption, we are extending a lifeline to children who have been caught in the crossfire of an unjust war. Let's make sure that even in the darkest of times, we're creating pathways to brighter futures. I hope my colleagues will join me in supporting HRES 915, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentleman from Guam is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I thank my colleagues, Mr. Smith and Mr. Necross, for introducing this important resolution. International adoption is a profound way to unite vulnerable children with families that are eager to open their hearts and homes. There are numerous families across the United States who want to be the light of Ukrainian children who have been surrounded by the darkness of Putin's war. We can offer hope to children who have been robbed of it. I urge my colleagues to support HRES 915, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 915? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? Gentlemen seek the yeas and nays.
Yes, yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess, subject to the call of the chair.